it going? It's Kaz here, and in today's video I'm going to talk about how to actually get started with budgeting. So if you're interested in finding out how we got started and little tips to help you get going, please follow along. If you're not already subscribed, please do, and please like the video if you enjoyed this video. It just helps my video get seen by a good few more people and just gets a little boost in the YouTube algorithm. So without further ado, how I got started. So basically what I did, and what I'd say to most people to start doing first before you go any further down the money hole of figuring out what's going where, I started first by just tracking what I was spending. So I wrote down everything that we spent. I kept every receipt. So you know when you go into the shop and you've swiped your laser card and they ask you, do you want a receipt? I just kept every receipt, and I kept a running total of what myself and my husband were spending. So no matter how big or small, I was keeping a tally of exactly what we were spending. And I just wrote them all down on a piece of paper. My husband actually, so you could do this if this helps, he prefers using his phone. So he just got his phone, and in the notes app he just started keeping a tally of exactly what he was spending, and I just used pen and paper and wrote it all down on my book. And then at the end of the month I just added his to mine, and we went through it and broke each expense down into different categories. So after a month we were able to see what we spent on food, what we spent on fuel, what we spent on takeaways, all of our outgoings. We were able to see them written down, and we actually got a highlighter and we highlighted each category. So for example, I highlighted all of the food in green, all of the diesel in another colour, just so that we would know what we were spending where. So we did that for 1 month, and then we had a look at our totals, and we decided that we wanted to spend a little bit less in some areas, and maybe a bit more on, say, food, because we weren't going to be getting takeaways, etc. So we decided to do a mock budget. So this is a budget that is just going to be a trial run just to see how you go. I decided to err on the side of being a bit stricter, just to see how we could go, and then we would be able to move up or down. So what we did for that first month is we actually didn't start off as cash budgeters then. What we did instead was we just kept a tally, and when we got to that amount that we had decided we weren't going to spend any more on, we just flagged it, and if we needed to spend more then that was fine, because it was a trial budget. So yeah, I personally think by cash budgeting you'll be a bit stricter on the purse strings, and it's a lot harder to spend over a certain amount. But by all means start off without cash budgeting if you want to just get an idea of numbers. So in the beginning our biggest expense was on food, and we were actually spending probably double what we're spending now on food. So yeah, we were getting takeaways, but we were also spending crazy money on food anyway. Like, we would be going into Tesco's and coming out with a basket full of shopping, and it would be costing €100 for nothing really. So yeah, so we actually were able to halve our food budget. We currently spend a little less than €400 a month now on food. Obviously prices are increasing, but this is the current price, and we were spending nearly €800 on food. So yeah, we've halved that budget. That was the first thing we did. So I recommend the biggest tool you'll need for writing out your first mock budget is going to be a little notebook, or you can even just use a piece of paper and a pen. It's really that simple. So yeah, like some of my earliest budgets are just very short. You probably won't be able to see that, it'll be backwards. But yeah, it's very short and sweet, and it's just basically splitting up all of the categories and what we wanted to spend in each one. The other thing you need to do before you start writing out your budget is just to write out your direct debits. So I still use a piece of paper like this just to keep an eye on my direct debits, and I still like check it off every now and then. Now a few of these have changed since I wrote this current one, because the one I actually use is on my tablet. But yeah, this is just one I was using before. So you just write the date that the direct debit is expected to come out. And if it is expected to come out within 3 days, I'd always go for the earliest date. And then you want to put in the amount. If, say, banking fees is a good example, it's an approximate. For the bank that we are with, we actually have to pay it monthly. But I know some banks are quarterly. What you might have to do is err on the higher end of that average bank account fee. Don't forget your banking fees, because they can just creep up on you and just take a load out. So what you do then is add up all of your direct debits, and for that pay period that are coming out, take them out of your budget, and then what's left is what you're budgeting for the month. When you're very first starting off, what I would suggest is don't make it complicated. Don't try and fill sinking funds or any of that yet. What I would start off with is just the basic budget. So you're working out exactly what you need to survive. The other thing that I think is really important, especially when you're starting, and especially if you're a lower income like us, is to watch your 4 walls. So your 4 walls are the things that you need to survive. So you need to make sure that they are fully funded, no matter what. So the most important one is obviously food. So we have brought down our grocery budget, but we also are making sure that we're still able to eat. Obviously with inflation now, we might need to bring it up in a little while, but for now it seems to be okay. We're saving money in other ways with food. So we have our food, and we budget €200 at the moment for food, and that is per paycheck, so it works out €100 a week. We get paid twice a month. So €100 a week we put aside for food, and that feeds our family of 5. And no matter what, we are putting that money aside for food. And it doesn't get spent on anything else, only food. So whether you want to use digital vaults or use cash, I would suggest putting it aside so you don't spend it accidentally. So the next wall that you want to worry about out of your 4 walls is your house. So whether you're renting or if you're paying a mortgage, you have to make sure that that house is safe, that you have paid your rent or your mortgage and it's not going to be taken away. So you have food, housing, and then the third wall is your transport. So whether you have a car or you use public transport, you have to put a certain amount aside each month towards that. Obviously you need to be able to get to work or you'll have no money. You might need to get the kids to school or to get to the shops. So your next wall is transport. So you have your 4th wall, and that is utilities. So you need to be able to pay for electricity, and also you need to be able to heat your house. So obviously it'd be no good being in a cold house in the middle of winter. It wouldn't be good for you and it wouldn't be good for your family. So you need to put aside a certain amount in your budget towards that. So they are your 4 walls. Without them fueled, you will be at nothing. The other things are not necessarily luxuries, but you can do without them. So for example, clothing, you probably already have some clothing. You might need to buy another dress this month. You might need to buy another pair of shoes. And they are things that you can save for. For example, my baby needs shoes in the next month and we have started saving for them. So yeah, just stuff that you can save for. It isn't needed every month and it isn't needed every week. Okay, so then the next thing then is you want to identify out of the money that's left what you would like to also put money towards. So they would be your other things in the month, like eating out, personal money, money for pocket money for the kids. They might be activities that are coming up, things like that. So that's what I would do for that first month of budgeting. So you've done a month of just working out how much you're already spending. Then in your next month, you've done up a basic mock budget. You're not going to be worrying about future expenses, you accept what is happening in this paycheck. Okay, so then in your third budget, you have already done those first 2 months. You should have an idea of what you were spending, and you should now have an idea of how that budget went. So you're going to look at your budget, you're going to have it down in front of you, and then on your other page you should also have what you actually spent. So here's what you wanted to spend, what you predicted, and then bring over that piece of paper where you wrote down exactly what you spent. And you're going to compare the two. So say you budgeted €100 a week towards food, and last month you spent €100 a week on food, but you also caved in and got takeaways a few times. Maybe you need to put a bit more into food. Maybe you're depriving yourself a bit too much in the beginning. So things like that can kind of help. The other thing that you should do is look at the little things you're buying. So are you going into Tesco's to buy bread and milk and ending up with other stuff you didn't need? Maybe you're actually better off going to the local convenience store. This is something I do myself. If I go down to the local convenience store where I live, even though the stuff in there is dear, I will only come out with that bread and milk. I won't buy anything else because it's crazy in there. Sometimes that's a better way to save money. So you need to go through that budget, figure out what's going on, and improve it. So then your third month, what you're going to be doing is you are going to go through that budget. You should have a bit left over, hopefully, from the last month, because you weren't putting any money towards future expenses. And what I would say is I would start saving that. That's going to be your buffer or your emergency fund. So ideally, before you go any further, I want you to start saving towards this emergency fund or buffer. So then in this next month, which is your month 3, you're obviously going to be doing a new budget, and hopefully this time, because you've already done a mock budget, this will be much closer this month to your real numbers. So this month is still a mock, but it's much closer to the real deal, and I would be quite a bit stricter on yourself this time. So like I said, going back to the food example, say you were spending €100 a week on food last month and it just didn't work out. You were seeing yourself spending much more on takeaways, and you needed to up that a little bit. Then I would up it a little bit more, work out what you think you might need. So maybe 150 a week. You're going to put that into your budget, and this time you're going to try really hard to have something left over from that. So that's how I started. So that's how I brought down my budget, was I tried really hard to not spend all of my food budget. So I might have had 150 a week in my food budget, and I tried really hard not to spend it all. So say over the 4 weeks, out of the €600 I had set aside for food, I maybe in the beginning had 500 spent and I had €100 left. Well, then I knew the next month that 500, that wasn't too bad. I was fine with that. So then you might decide, okay, well, from now on, we're going to stay at 500. So that's what happened with us, and we went down, 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 and we realised, okay, 400 is fine for the month. That feeds our family fine, and actually a lot of the time I have a little bit left over, and I'm able to use that for other costs that are coming up, sinking funds. So that's what I would advise. I would get down, 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 and find yourself a place where you're happy with the food you're buying. So for month 3, what you're doing is you're tightening that budget down. You're coming closer to your final numbers, and then you're going to look over what is left. So what is left is going to be put towards your other goals. So, for example, you have to create an emergency fund. Without an emergency fund, you won't have anything there if something goes wrong, and you'll be tempted to go into debt. So it's really important that you start bringing up that emergency fund. So I have decided to have an emergency fund for our family of €1,000, and that is put aside. It depends on you and your situation how much you want to put in. It's not going to be my final emergency fund. Once I've paid off my debt, I'm going to have 3 months expenses put aside in a separate savings account. But this is just the emergency fund if anything goes wrong while I'm trying to pay off debt. So that's what I would concentrate on. But while you're doing that, I would also look at sinking funds. And I would start off with anything that's coming up in the next 3 months. If you have already some savings, what I would suggest looking at now is if you have any debt, paying off some of that debt with your savings. Decide what your emergency fund is and pay it off the rest of your debt whatever you have left in savings. So yeah, it doesn't make any sense for that money to be sitting there and meanwhile you're paying some crazy amount on interest. If you don't already have more than just your emergency fund, you're next going to work on paying off your debt. So that's how it's going to work. It's going to go each month. You're going to be looking over the budget and you're going to be tweaking it. You're going to be looking at your sinking funds and you're going to be working on your goals, whether you are working on your emergency fund, whether you are working on paying off debt, and whether you've gotten to the stage where you're going for your 3 to 6 month emergency fund. And meanwhile, you're obviously going to be saving for any future expenses that are coming. And basically, that's you budgeting. It's as easy as that. It's hard to get going in the beginning. To be honest, I would say one of the most difficult things is to start looking at your money in the very, very beginning. That first month of writing down all of your expenses is such an eye-opener. Yeah, it will absolutely surprise you what your money will be probably going on. Online shopping, you might be getting takeaways, you might be going for coffees all the time. These were all things that I was struggling with. And yeah, it's amazing where it can all go. So yeah, it's as easy as that. I wouldn't start off with all the binders and all that yet. I would do your first month is just pen and paper and just get started that way. Once you have got going and you're in the swing of it for 2-3 months, you could of course go for all of the binders, and you can also get a digital budget. I honestly wouldn't start with that. I know I'm selling it on my Etsy, but I wouldn't start with that in the beginning. I would just start with pen and paper and don't make it complicated on yourself. There's a lot of people online that really can overcomplicate it sometimes, but it isn't that hard. Pen and paper. The biggest thing is looking through your online banking and your partners. I'd also make sure you can get your partner on board, explain to them why you're doing this, you know, say that it's stressing you out and you want to get a hold on things. And if they're not on board immediately, don't worry, you show them how it's done. Because I know in our house I started off, and just didn't take long. Didn't take long for himself to get on board. And yeah, when they can see you not stressing anymore and they're stressing and you're also saving, it can make such a difference, and they'll just be on board before you know it. And yeah, I hope this video was helpful. Let me know how you get on. If it's your first month budgeting, please let me know. I'd love to hear from anyone who's only starting. And don't get overwhelmed. If you to take a couple of months of just looking at your expenses, that's fine too. It can take a little bit of time to really hone in on it, and it can be quite overwhelming to keep looking at the numbers every evening and writing them down. And I think as well, a lot of people lose motivation about halfway through the month. So if you need to, maybe make a date with yourself every Sunday night to just check in and make sure you've written down everything. And that's how I would start. But yeah, let me know how you get on, and I hope this video wasn't too long. It was definitely a chatty video, and I will chat to you all in my next video. Thanks for watching. Bye.